Hello. My name is Psalti, and I'm a principal group program manager in the Azure AI engineering team at Microsoft. And today we're going to be talking about infusing generative AI in your apps using the Azure OpenAI service. Before we talk about Azure OpenAI, I want to take a minute to kind of like walk us through a little bit about the evolution of AI that started several decades ago. So it was a long way coming, and starting with artificial intelligence back in the 50s and 60s, then continuing with machine learning. Then we saw the proliferation of deep neural networks and deep learning. And now, in the last couple of years, we've seen the rise of generative AI, which is basically a new way of building more models and creating new written, visual, and auditory content that can be generated through a prompt. And also, I want to point out a little bit about the difference between a traditional model and how it's built versus a generative AI model. So the traditional approach of an AI model involves models that are developed basically separately or in silos. So if you want to do a classification task, then you need to build a classification model, and it can be used only for this task. If you want kind of like a distribution model or a sentiment analysis model, you need to create these task-specific models that are trained to do this particular task, and they can't be used more broadly. So when we talk about generative AI, this is a little bit different in the sense that foundational models are at heart, kind of like, at the heart of these breakthroughs that we see right now. And they really change the paradigm in how a model is structured. In a nutshell, a foundational or a foundation model is a machine learning model that is trained on a large corpus of unlabeled data, and this allows it to be adapted to a wide variety of tasks. So these models can capture general patterns and structure of data, and they can replace task-specific models. So we can take a closer look as we look at the examples, but that's the kind of primary difference. And then I also want to talk a little bit about our collaboration with OpenAI. OpenAI is a startup, is a nonprofit that started several years ago. We started working with them and partnering with them a couple of years back, and basically we take the models, the OpenAI models that you see here, which is basically GPT-3, Codex, Dall-E, and the ChatGPT one, and we can and basically we make them available in the Azure AI portfolio. And a closer look to the models that we see is for example, for GPT-3 is a text completion and text generation model. So it can understand and generate natural language. So in this instance, the prompt is saying write a tagline for an ice cream shop, and the response is we serve up smiles with every scoop. Is it absolutely perfect? Probably not. So I think it's a good start to create something a little bit more elaborate, but it definitely can, save a lot of time, and it can create fairly accurate results on the flip side. Codex is the second one, is a set of models that understand and generate code, including translating natural language to code, which can be really, really useful. Is a great way to democratize kind of like, computer science in general, and really enable citizen developers and broader hobbies to, really start coding. Um, And the third one is Dall-E, which is kind of like a text to image model. So a set of models that can generate or manipulate images from natural language. In this case, the prompt says a white Siamese cat, and the response comes with a newly generated image of a white Siamese cat. And then the GPT-3 related model, ChatGPT, which is a conversational AI that kind of like enables you to interact the same way you would do with a bot. And another thing that I wanted to point out is that even within the GPT-3 and the Codex models, there are models underneath. And if you can go into the OpenAI and the Azure OpenAI playground, you can see and select the model that you need. In most cases, we see the DaVinci being used more often, but a lot of our customers and a lot of the teams that we work with use others like Curie or Cushman. So I invite you to explore different options because you don't have to use the Da Vinci model all the time, and they can be more cost-efficient ways to complete your task without, using one particular. And you can definitely mix and match and use a combination. So a little bit about kind of like the prompt architecture, if you will. There are three basic guidelines to creating prompts. One, you want to make it clear in what you want in, as a result of the query. So in this case, we wanted the prompt to be kind of like, give me the address of, this kind of text. And this text can be short, can be long, it can multiple records. Then the second part is providing quality data. So, if you're trying to build a classifier or get a model to follow a particular pattern, you need to make sure that you feed enough examples in the model. And the third piece, specifically for this generative AI models, is to check your settings. So there are a lot of different parameters that you can alter, and this way you can find kind of like the ultimate set of outcomes that you need. So with Codex, I think we touched on it in previous slides. As we said, it really accelerates the software development because you don't have to write code from scratch. It also provides code documentation, which is really, really key, especially for developers that, most developers don't want to do this work. And it also widens and broadens the type of developers that can actually write code. It supports a lot of different programming languages, from Python to SQL, Java, etc. It can, generate code from natural language. It can create documentation, and it can also be used when you have a large API library as well, which is really, really key. Dall-E, as we said, it can generate the image from text. It can be very, very creative, a great creative way to start a marketing campaign, to, do an email campaign that is aligned to your brand. As you can see here, it can be very, very creative. You can see the second image with the Bez working on AI research on the moon in the 1980s. And you can see how you can actually really prompt it to be very, very specific and particular in an era, in a style, which can be, really a great start for you to further really evolve. And also, OpenAI is part of a broader set of AI tools that we have in the Azure AI portfolio. You can have, I would say, start as high as you can and go as low as you need, meaning the first couple of lines in that stack you can see are mostly for business users. So these are non-developers, maybe these are citizen developers, these are your knowledge workers. So we have a lot of tools with Power Apps and Power Automate and Power Virtual Agents that can really help your kind of like, your citizen developers develop simple apps. Then if you want to go one level deeper, then we go into kind of like, work that you really need developers and data scientists for that. And we have these scenario-based services. So this is kind of like, if you don't want to stitch up a bunch of APIs by yourself and you want kind of like a more end-to-end view, like Form Recognizer, which will take a look. It's a great way to analyze your documents, kind of like, extract the relevant entities, use search to activate these tasks, and then, kind of like, further drive any analysis or insights. So if you want something more end-to-end, the scenario-based ones will be interesting. Also, we have customizable AI models by vision, speech, language. So again, this is a great way. If you have a particular task, you can use one of those kind of like, pre-trained, but also customizable API accessed AI models. And if none of these work for what you're trying to do and you want to create your own model, then we provide you the tools as well with the Azure ML suite. And, it's a great way to, start from scratch and kind of like, really manage the whole process end to end. And when you look at the overall Azure OpenAI service, a lot of people ask, well, what is the difference? If I can get the models from OpenAI, why do I need Azure? I would say that the Azure OpenAI service is like any other Azure service. So it's enterprise ready. You can, really, you can leverage your existing Azure subscription. You can deploy it through your Azure subscription. It can be secured, the same way. It can be managed in the same way. You can use Azure Active Directory to provision and manage users. It has additional security and reliability components, additional responsible AI capabilities, which is really great for traceability and make sure that you have the right filters to block harmful or biased results. So it's definitely, I would say, enterprise ready. And we did spend a lot of time really thinking about responsible AI components, considerations. We wanted to make sure that we provide additional tools and also enrich the models to make sure that they detect problematic content like hate, violence, or even PII. So you can really use it, in a much more safer way. And now I want to talk a little bit about the use cases, the top use cases that we see. Again, this service has been available in general availability since January, but we started working with early adopters now for 18 months. So this is not necessarily a complete picture of all the different Azure OpenAI use cases that we see, but it will give you kind of like, a couple of ideas and highlights. The first of all we see is the content generation. And this is a great way to really activate and enrich the call center analytics that you have. It can automatically generate responses, emails. It can really provide this great kind of like personalized emails that, usually take a lot of time and it's hard to automate. And you can also kind of like integrate it with a bot that you already have, or kind of like a portal or a website that you already have. The second one is summarization, and this is quite popular as well. It's really associated also in many cases with call center analytics, because this is where we see lengthy and long conversational logs that need to be summarized, and you need to extract some, kind of like insight or drive some analytics. Also, we see it a lot with analyst reports, with financial documents. A great way also for marketing and advertising agencies to kind of process a lot of different social media information and create kind of like trend analysis. For code generation, we see a lot of cases where, we need to convert natural language into code, but it can do the other way around. And as I said, the one that we see more often is the code documentation. That can be kind of like, a hard process, and, it's great to have a tool that can automate this. And the fourth one is around semantic search, so the ability to do knowledge mining and search for particular images, products, services. But the interesting piece that we see is the multiple use cases. So the end-to-end call center analytics. So this is where you need to do a couple of different tasks at the same time. So if you want to classify all these different logs, if you want to extract the sentiment, and you want to also do the entity extraction as well, then you want to summarize it and then send automatically a personalized email. So the Azure OpenAI will be a great tool for that. Also, business process automation. We're going to take a look at the architecture of that. This is a great way to search through structured and unstructured documents, whether it's forms or contracts, and create kind of like an email or a content or a summary. And we can take a quick look at the different architecture pieces. Oh, sorry. At the different architecture side. So one is the contact center analytics, using the speech AI, speech API, and the Azure OpenAI service. So this can be integrated with a call center that you already have. It can have a lot of, it can use the speech to text Azure AI API to transcribe these logs and create documents that then you can use the Azure OpenAI service to extract whatever insights or do an analysis. And then you can either feed it through kind of like, a Power BI or an analytics tool, or you can use your CRM to write, personalize and write and send an email. Another kind of like deeper dive into the document process automation that we touched in the beginning. This is great if you have forms, contracts, like structured documents, but also it can work with unstructured documents and also with handwritten documents if you have. So we're using OCR, the optical character recognition, and form recognizer, which is another Azure AI service, to basically extract the right entities through the documents. Then we use the Azure Cognitive Search service to index these documents. And then we use Azure OpenAI that can provide an interface to generate natural language summaries of these documents. You can, store these documents in Cosmos DB or, any other database that you have. And it can also integrate with the Power BI service as well. So these are a couple of the use cases that we see. This is an example of where you can prompt the Azure OpenAI service to go through lengthy documents that we talked about, and you instruct it to kind of like, summarize things. So what is the main reason for the conversation, the sentiment? Did the agent handle the conversation well? What was the final outcome? And then create a short summary of the conversation. And as you can see, it can do it really fast, really easy, quite accurately, and consider this doing it for several kind of like, hundreds and thousands of records that you might have. So this is a great use case. The other case is This is an example where we have, we're using the OpenAI prompt to, and then it generates code, which, you can take the JSON code and then integrate it into whatever else you have. And also this use case shows that it can work with multiple languages as well. So now the prompt is in German and the output can be in English, which is really, really cool. A couple of examples and then some best practices. We worked with CarMax and they're using the Azure OpenAI service to go through a lot of customer reviews that they have. They had records from 11 years back, so really, really a lot of documents to go through. And they were able to really use the Azure OpenAI service to summarize and create insights, trends, so that they can feed that into a marketing campaign and personalize it based on the target audience that they have, which is really cool. The second one is from a Dutch insurance company, Nationale Nederlanden. They were able to use the Azure OpenAI service to go and extract the relevant information from hundreds of documents that they had, a lot of unstructured data, meaning large contracts or large documents, agreements, and they were able to automate their claim processing, which is really cool. And then the third one is with Soul Machines, which is a partner from New Zealand that we worked with. They have these avatars, these digital humans, they call them. They're basically avatars that can really further personalize the customer service experience. And they were able to use the Azure OpenAI service to help these avatars with the sentiment extraction and analysis from this conversation so that they can become and they can show more empathy when they interact with customers. So I want to close with a couple of best practices, if you will, or considerations. As you saw in a previous slide, the Azure AI service or set of services, if you will, the whole portfolio is quite rich and it has a lot of different tools. So I would always start with a pain point, with a use case and what you're trying to solve, and then find out what the right tool for the job is. So if you are interested in Azure OpenAI, these are some of the kind of like best cases that we see that this tool is the right one to use. So if you want a general purpose model that can handle a lot of different tasks, so if you want to translate something and then you want to do the entity recognition and then you want to do a summarization or a sentiment analysis, then Azure OpenAI will be the right tool for the job. Also, if you want human-like content while preserving the privacy and security, this is also a great tool. Rapid prototyping, and if you want to get to market fast, these are very, very powerful models and they can help with that. And also if you want to use a model that requires no or little training. Again, these generative AI models are very powerful. They have been trained on billions and trillions of different parameters, so they can be very powerful. By the time you start fine-tuning and further training the model, it becomes a cumbersome and quite expensive task. So this is what I wanted to share with you today. You can find more information in our product website. You can also request access to the Azure OpenAI service. And for any questions, we're here to help. So thank you. And now I'll take your questions.